Hello, and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are streaming live from the Team Needham Abode podcast studio. And we are super excited to have Charles Mayfield on our podcast today to be discussing regenerative agriculture. Charles, welcome to our show.
Great to see you, Shawn and Janet. Merry almost Christmas.
That's right. Yeah, Merry Christmas. So I'm not going to say it's a new term, but maybe it's a more popular term now, regenerative agriculture. So tell us a little bit about what it is.
Yeah, it gets thrown around a lot. I like to distill it down to sort of one simple thing. If you are farming in a manner that builds healthy soil, then you are farming regeneratively. Now, that's at the highest level, but to unpack that, you need animals, you need animal impact. You need to lean into natural systems, the sun, rain, grasses growing on the plains, and and you need multiple animals. If you look at any natural ecology, which there are very few left on this planet, but many of the natural ecologies, you have that. You have animal movement, animal impact, multi-speciation, and sort of leaning into nature and the cycle that exists there. And so that for me is regenerative agriculture, and it boils down to building healthy soil.
Janet, what questions do you have?
So I come from an agricultural background. My father was a farmer and rancher. And when I look at my grandparents, how they lived, it seemed like they were more existing on their homestead and their property versus what's happening now. So I think there's a lot of people that are not connected with agriculture that don't understand how things have really changed. So can we just kind of give a little bit of history of what happened? Because I know I've seen it, but I don't know if everybody understands what's happened to our food supply and how that's kind of played out.
Yeah, Janet, you're touching on the biggest threat to humanity, which I call AI, and it's agricultural ignorance for those that thought I was going down the tech route. Yeah, I mean, I don't think things like veganism or plant-based foods or lab-grown meats, I don't think any of those things exist in a world of agriculturally literate people. And so to unpack the history, I would say, well, the plow was a big one. I mean, if you want to rewind the history books, the plow was a big one. Agriculture, crop and grain agriculture, and its evolution and development over the hundreds of years is a really big part of it. But yeah, I would say we've done a lot of damage in the last 100 years. It's really accelerated, and I would point to maybe World War II. Not that that battle didn't need to be won and that war didn't need to take place, but we industrialized in the early 1900s, late 1800s. And coming out of World War II, we figured out how to do a couple things really good, really well, I should say. We figured out how to harvest nitrogen out of the air and turn it into things that blow up. Well, after the war, we didn't have to blow as much up anymore. And so the agricultural industry, certainly here in America, but ultimately globally, was pushed this synthetic crop food, if you will, this fertilizer, nitrogen-based fertilizer, which, I think we can all agree we're very short-sighted, a very short-sighted species. And so if I can put something on my land and in a matter of days or weeks, my crop is 2 feet taller and this much greener, and that looks great. And the problem with that, and we understand a lot of this now, which is an abominable statement to make, that we understand that we're poisoning the soil and the microbiome that lives in that soil by putting these synthetic fertilizers and all the antifungal, anti-pest. The agricultural industry today, and when I say this, I'm speaking more of the big industry, not these small regenerative farmers, but it leans so heavily into the pharmaceutical and the chemical companies to even grow a crop. And we've degraded our soils. I'm going to make this. It really needs to be about the soil. I want to say it was the UN, maybe 20 years ago, in the last 15 to 20 years, published a study where they predicted that, and this has been in the last 10 to 15 years, they predicted that we would run out of topsoil globally in about 60 harvests. And, again, in an agriculturally ignorant society, that doesn't resonate. But I got news for everybody. If we run out of topsoil, the game's over. Period. There's nothing we can grow in a lab. There's nothing grows in the absence of topsoil. And so, ultimately, the more people, the world we live in today is absolutely phenomenal, but we have the lowest percentage of the population farming and producing food than ever before in history. And it's not that that's bad. We've got technologies and various things that can make food production way more efficient. However, we've degraded our soils. The Corn Belt in the United States of America was built by millions of herding bison and migratory birds, and 20, they measured, some areas were 20 feet deep of topsoil, and there's none there now. It's literally just it's dirt. And when I say dirt and soil, for your listener, please understand, dirt is this dead material. Soil is a living, tons of organic matter. Soil is a living entity. And so we've turned what was arguably the most fertile soil in this country into a soon to be dust bowl. And so I hope I answered your question, Janet, but the biggest threat to our health, I believe, is this agricultural ignorance, because there's so many things going on in the world with soil, with the reliance on chemical and synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, that I believe in an agriculturally literate society would not be tolerated.
Well, there's so many life cycles that, we're taught in biology and we're taught in our schools, but we're not practicing those life cycles very well. We're not understanding the fact that, a living creature like our ruminants, like our cows and the bison, and, what we're really taught right now is that they are toxic to the world we live in, but they're the reason we have all the food on our table. Really. I mean, they're the ones that made that soil amazing. And really what we've done is we've given us the picture of that, cows kill us, bison kill us.
Again, in an agriculturally ignorant society, let's unpack that one real quick, because it's a hot button. Cows are ruining the planet. Right. Well, so what does that mean? Well, what they do is they measure the methane coming out of a cow. Methane comes in several forms. Okay, there's methane and the greenhouse gases that come out of a car, and then there's the methane that comes out of a cow. And molecularly, they're slightly different, but they measure it coming out of a cow. And they take that snapshot and they say the cow's poisoning the atmosphere. They're leading to climate change. What they don't do, and this is really, science is phenomenal, but the field of science has become quite corrupt in the last several decades.
Right.
But what they do is they take a snapshot. Science can be very reductionist, and in many cases that can be good. But if you take a snapshot of the days following the methane leaving the cow, then yeah, you'd think cows are poisoning the planet. But if you stretch that life cycle of that methane out over 10 years, and this is all known science, but that methane eventually converts to CO2 and water.
Of course.
And yeah, it's a natural system.
It's combustion.
And yes, and here's the more important part: that carbon because again, carbon's this dirty word today, right? But that carbon was the carbon that existed in the plant that the cow ate 10 years ago. Right. And so you've got this beautiful circular system that feeds our soil, cleans our air, generates water, and they take a snapshot of it, and they don't talk about the ending of the story, and all of a sudden, you know, cows are ruining the planet. I like to say, and agriculture is a really good topic to make this statement, but I believe the human experiment is a greater example of propaganda than intuition today, because
for sure. Yeah.
you know, and agriculture is a leading industry in this. We've just lost. We can't even take one step back, rewind the clock 100 years, 150 years. Like we had no cardiovascular disease 150 years ago,
Right.
and we ate copious amounts of animal fat. We had no, you know, I'm old enough. I'll be 52 in 2 months. I can't believe it. But I'm old enough to remember when it was global freezing and then global warming.
Yes.
And now they finally just switched to climate change, because obviously that's a nice little placeholder for the climate's changing. So we got to do something about it. And so, yeah.
Well, one thing that hit me, Charles, was you talked about the chemical companies, making fertilizer, and you mentioned pharmaceutical companies in the same sentence. And Janet and I, being two pharmacists that don't believe in drugs to treat long-term disease, it makes a lot of sense why there's so much corruption. We understand in the pharmaceutical industry there's a lot of corruption, and really, now that I think about it, the fertilizer industry and the pharmaceutical industry, they're probably darn near one and the same. I mean, think about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, dig into the history books. I mean, Rockefeller, you know, they just, I mean, again, this is all written history. You can go back and look at it, but you know, they disassembled his global petroleum empire, and he very quickly realized that a lot of drugs and pharmaceuticals could be derived from the pharmaceutical or from the petroleum industry. And Janet, you mentioned this, you know, with every single land grant agricultural school in this country for sure is funded by Bayer, Monsanto, and big pharma. And
absolutely,
you know, I think you and I think we can all agree that drugs are a miracle. You know, penicillin. You know, we don't have to talk about the shots and stuff like that, but I mean, you know, there are some drugs out there that are absolutely life-changing, life-saving, but the entire industry, I would say medical industry, pharmacological industry, have in lockstep stopped talking about lifestyle change and managing, you know, what do they say? If you break your arm, go to the doctor. But if you've got some kind of chronic autoimmune condition, like, good luck. And so we pushed it.
I'll tell you, eat meat. That's what you need to do.
Well, fair enough. Eat meat from healthy, happy animals.
Right.
So I'm going to back up in history a little bit, because you mentioned about how people ate meat. And like my mother's family, they lived through the Depression. They ate a lot of, I mean, she talks about large sandwiches, basically. They put just grease on bread. But the amazing part of like her parents and grandparents, if you look at their longevity, it was so different than what we have now, in the space that these people lived very healthy lives until they passed. And many of them just passed in their sleep, probably from a heart attack or something. But at the same time, up until that point, they were very active and thriving. And when I look back at my childhood, I remember like my neighbor was in his 90s out welding in his shop for his sons that were out in the field. And then he'd give them break. And I have an uncle that does that too in their 90s. And, you know, people kind of make it like, well, if you were a farmer, you really weren't that smart, but you had to be smart, right? Because you didn't have, you know, like my grandparents didn't have, you know, Monsanto's or all these other hacks to raise their gardens or their crops. But when I was a child, I remember picking strawberries with my grandmother, and she hadn't had animals on her property forever. She was well into her 80s. And the way her garden was located from where all the animals were was downhill. So it was naturally fertilized, and it was still, you know, being a good thing for her soil, and her garden was beautiful
years later.
Yeah, I mean, like she had, you know, and you know, you think about this, it's like that food versus what we have in the grocery store, the taste, the content, and the nutrients are night and day. And most people don't even realize that, what our ancestors did with their food, the minerals were there, the right, like strawberries that we get from California are giant compared to what hers were. I mean, so there's so many different parts and aspects that have changed over, the decades.
Well, food certainly in America, but food is grown for transportation, not for nutrition.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, where do you go from there? I mean, it gets back to the soil again. I mean, the supplement industry, if we had healthy soil in this country, the supplement industry would be a full third what it is today. And I'm glad we have it, because again, most of the food, that this is a huge battleship, right? And it's not going to turn quickly, but I'm grateful. I'm very grateful that we can have a conversation like this, and hopefully there's listeners out there. But our food is devoid of nutrition. Now, I will say, and this is a testament to meat, but it's hard to have a nutrient devoid steak.
Right.
Even one grown in the CAFO industrial farming system is just so. When we're talking, actually, this would be good to. So you've got ruminant species, which is a huge industry. That's mostly beef, but you've got lamb, and I think goat is the most broadly eaten herbivorous meat on the planet. We don't eat a lot of goat in this country, but third world, goats are, they can eat almost anything, plant-based. They're smaller framed. And so, you can, we didn't eat a lot of beef. Sir, we ate zero fresh beef 130 years ago, because when could you, this is pre-refrigeration. So when could you harvest an animal that, live weight weighs 1,500, 2,000 pounds? Well, you had to do it in the winter because it was cold enough to hang the carcass, it not spoil, and give you enough time to, butcher it out and mostly, jerk it, dry it. We most of the beef we used to eat was dried or jerked or cured. Pemmican, a carnivore bar. I'm sure I don't know how I missed you guys in Tampa. I know it was busy couple days, but hopefully we'll all be back there next year. But but pemmican, the carnivore bar is basically a 1,000-year-old pemmican recipe. But goats, sheep, pigs. Pigs are my superhero. I'm a big fan of pigs. The smaller animals that you could, a couple of adult humans could manage the carcass, and it was small enough to where you could get through butchering the whole thing. You could, take the animal's life, you could throw it in spring water to cool it off, and then you could have it butchered and cured or eat it fresh, in July. That was not the case for, cows were for milking and making the butter and the cheese and the milk that we drink. It's Janet, you're absolutely right. And contextually, we were an agrarian society up until probably World War I, World War II. I mean, the freedom gardens of World War II, everyone had a garden in their backyard to free up more of the industrialized food to go to the troops. What's the number? I think less than 2% of the population in the U.S. is farming now. That was 40 or 50% way back then. And so it all comes back to healthy soil and agricultural ignorance, as far as I'm concerned.
So I want to go back a little ways. When you're talking about fertilizer, and we take nitrogen and, process it from many different sources and concentrate it into fertilizer to help plants grow. And we're trying to copy basically what, the ruminants or animals, have nitrogenous waste in their urine and their feces, and it works great for fertilizer. And then kind of like what we do in the pharmaceutical industry. We try to, some plant that's worked forever for fevers or headaches, we try to isolate the active ingredient out of it and then give it to humans. But we miss the point, and it causes all kinds of side effects, and it might not be as effective, and it causes lots of problems. I see the fertilizer industry just like that.
Mm-hmm.
We say, oh, well, we're going to make these plants grow because we're going to put nitrogen in it. And, I get it. Some of those fertilizers have potassium and all that kind of stuff in it. But there is no way we can copy nature and natural fertilizers like we think we can. There's no way. So we're missing a big point. The analogy I'm going to use is back in the 70s when the pharmaceutical industry was arrogant enough to bring Simulac on the market. Simulac stands for simulated lactation. It is baby formula. And drug companies were telling doctors that this is better than breast milk. And that's how ignorant we are. And that's how big the propaganda is, in the pharmaceutical industry and the food industry, because we're basically being told that these fertilizers are better than natural fertilizers. And there's no way they can be. They will never, ever be as good.
Shawn, that's a great point. And I want to drive this home. I think one of the biggest cons, all of us have been convinced, is that there's somehow a synthetically grown or harvested, I'm going to call it a nutrient, whether we're talking about skincare, what we eat, or a farm. I would make the argument that certain pharmaceutical plant-based compounds they're nutrients, micro, but still nutrients. We've been convinced, all of us, that somehow a lab-grown or fertilizer or synthetic version of, I'll make it about skincare, retinol. Retinol is a buzzword in skincare. Well, retinol, folks, is vitamin A.
Yep.
Right.
And so they've convinced the skincare consumer that this lab-grown, synthetically derived, completely molecularly different, even if it's just one molecule, it's molecularly different than a naturally occurring vitamin A. And so they've convinced everyone, these synthetic compounds are on par. A food example, I forget which one, maybe Beyond Burger. One of these plant-based lab-grown meat companies got in a ton of hot water maybe 3 or 4 years ago because the package of sausage was labeled 19 grams of protein, which is true. It has 19 grams of protein, but it's this pea-based, chemically derived plant-based protein that we only metabolize about 60% of.
Yeah.
And so I think they paid a couple $2 billion settlement because people were consuming this product and being malnourished. It says 19 grams, but I'm only getting 10. And so that idea that something grown in a lab is on par with a natural vitamin, mineral, pharmacological ingredient, name it all, is a synthetic fertilizer. This synthetically derived nitrogen and potassium and, in this bag of 10-10-10 is somehow on par with natural manure is ludicrous.
It is. And it's just, anybody that thinks otherwise is just silly. Although I will tell you, in the pharmaceutical industry that we are in, some of those highly educated people called doctors, they drink the Kool-Aid. They believe it. They believe that, healing is going to come from drugs and not from, something that we're going to put in our bodies that was made thousands and thousands of years ago for us to ingest. It's crazy. Now, I want to go back on that too, about the cows ruining the planet with methane. Talk about how silly that is. Janet and I talk all the time when people ask us about red meat. They say, well, isn't red meat bad for us? Saturated fat's going to cause cardiovascular disease and blah, blah, blah. Because my doctor told me, my cardiologist told me I got to limit my red meat or limit my egg, how many eggs I eat, because cholesterol is bad. and seriously, that is the most irrational statement I've ever heard. Think about this. Bison, elk, deer, goats, cattle have been roaming the earth for thousands of years, and humans have been thriving on them for thousands of years, and we're going to call them bad. and they're destroying the environment. That makes no rational sense. I don't care what study you show me.
Shawn, we are the ideal example of propaganda over intuition. I mean, it's laughable. I've got some good friends that, you know, trying to talk to a vegan about this kind of stuff. I gave a TED talk back in September, and I don't think Ted liked my talk very much. I took a couple of swipes at the vegans, but you know, the idea that that animals in any form are somehow bad for the planet is beyond laughable.
Right. It's just silly. One thing I wanted to mention too is that, you know, we talk about animals being fertilizer for you know, the fields or whatever the plant that's being grown there. But it's so much more than that. And I want to give an example. So I'm going somewhere with this. Bear with me. We used to have a big dog, big Airedale, 100 plus pounds. And we have deer roaming around our neighborhood. We live in the middle of the desert, and there's desert mule deer that roam around. They eat in the hay fields. They drink the water in the lake. And when we had our big dog, they would never come in our yard because he kept them out. That was his job. And the last few years, he passed away. The last few years, the deer have been coming in our yard. And my grass has never, ever been greener. And it's not just that they fertilize with their nitrogenous waste. Their hooves aerate the grass.
That's right.
I mean, lawn care companies pay people or people pay lawn care companies to aerate their grass. Yet that's what ruminant animals do.
Yeah, there's a lot of cottage industries that are thriving due to this agriculturally ignorant culture. And so, you know, we've got a lot of work ahead of us. But yeah, a natural here. Okay, regenerative agriculture. Here's the coolest part about it. And this has all been so I've mentioned these natural systems. So in a natural system, you've got herding herbivores, you know, yak, wildebeest, bison, cows. These are herd animals. Zebra. They herd together. Why do they do that? Because as this sort of amalgamous blob, they're harder to pick out by a predator. You know,
Right.
We used to have herding herbivores and predators, and the predators drove them around. There was a study they were doing in Africa several years ago, and they were studying zebras, and the film crew couldn't pick out the right zebra. And so they would tranquilize a zebra, put a little red dot on it so that the film crew could identify the zebra. Within 2 days of doing that, that zebra was dead because the lions could now focus in on that one animal and target it and take it down. So we've got this natural system of herding herbivores pushed around so that the land gets grazed or mowed, and then long periods of rest because prey animals don't stay anywhere for very long. What am I getting at? Well, we figured out that God has anointed us overseers of this planet and to care for the animals. So we get to, as a farmer, I get to play predator. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead of lions and tigers and bears, I've got lightweight portable electric fencing. And so I can move this herd wherever it needs to go. I can allow the land to rest. And then at the perfect time, you know, in a great tightly run system like a White Oak Pastures or a Polyface Farms, when that grass is grown back and is at peak nutritional value, we come back and we mow it again. And what we've learned, back to soil, what we've learned is that through human innovation, technology, and leaning into natural systems, we can actually build soil faster than nature. And that is remarkable. I'll point to the work of Alan Savory at the Savory Institute. They have desertification is a big risk. Again, soils degrading. They've been able to regenerate soils that have been in desert landscape for centuries by employing this natural system, but they're able to do it, and we're able to, in a natural state, that acre or hectare of land might get grazed once or twice a year. But now I've got my electric fencing, I've got my my livestock guardian dogs to keep any predators at bay, and now we're able to maximize or optimize the efficiency of this natural system, build healthier soil faster. It's also better for the animal. These animals get to live the very best life possible. They don't have to worry about predators, and they get to eat all they want. And so all of those things wrapped up in, back to regenerative agriculture, it is the key to us globally maintaining our place at the top of the pyramid when it comes to managing our ecology and managing the land.
Yeah, those are great points. And it is possible. We're seeing it. We live in an agriculture community, and we're seeing it more, after they harvest the cornfield or the hay field. We see a lot of cattle roaming in those fields. They don't plow them under. That's good to see. And it's beneficial for not just the farmer that owns the land, but it's beneficial for the rancher too. I mean, the rancher basically, is getting free food for his cattle. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? And better food.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And again, I'm not sitting here saying we shouldn't be growing corn or wheat or soy. I choose not to eat most of those things, but I also want to feed, pigs. Pigs are omnivores, and they're, if you want to grow pigs in mass, you need to feed them. They're not going to, normally they can survive on the landscape just fine, but in concentrated groups, you need to feed them. So I want to feed those grains, healthy, responsibly grown grains. I want to feed them. And I know, people like their corn and this, that, and the other. So we've got no-till planters now. We've got some really cool technology that allows us to take advantage of the soil, but not erode it, not degrade it. In other words, the plow can be a thing of the past. There's so much.
So I was just going to ask that question about the plow. So you basically answered my question. So the problem with the plow is it's moving over topsoil. We're losing topsoil because of the plow. That's basically what you're saying, correct?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, a healthy, vibrant soil. Let's just say we got 3 inches of topsoil, which is great. Again, we had 20 feet of it in Iowa way back then. But yeah, let's just say we got 3 feet of topsoil, and that's 3 inches. That's a healthy, vibrant community of microbiome, microscopic organisms, exchanging nutrients with the roots of whatever's growing in that soil. And along comes the plow. It's going to cut down 4 inches, 6 inches, 10. I mean, I've seen some plows that go down probably 2 feet.
I pulled them.
Oh yeah, so you're taking the healthy, vibrant soil, you're flipping it over, and of course underneath that is dirt, and you're disrupting that community. Imagine you live in a nice neighborhood, and twice a year a couple of tornadoes come through there and just turn everything upside down. It's not going to be a very vibrant neighborhood ongoing. And so that's what the plow is doing to the soils neighborhood 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. And so it's not a great tool. It's a tool we employed again back 16, 17, 1800s, because everywhere was grass until you made it something else. And so the plow was a way to plow over or plow under the grass, flip it over, expose the bare dirt. And then, of course, then it's able to receive the seed, whatever we wanted to grow, and grow from there.
So I'm going to get a little bit political on you. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So that I remember in this conversation, you've mentioned 3 different crops. You mentioned corn, you mentioned wheat, you mentioned soybeans. So all 3 of those are heavily government subsidized.
Yes.
Okay. So tell us how government subsidies has basically ruined our farmland, or has it?
It's certainly discouraged innovation. I would say that our federal government has pointed their dollars towards one agricultural model for probably the past 60 years. Now, I just saw, we've got RFK doing what he's doing, and Brooks, and a number of people in the current administration that I think are, again, agriculture is no different than big pharma, is no different than big food. It's a giant ship we've got to turn around, and that's not going to happen overnight. But I am seeing, I think they just passed some legislation or something where they're going to start subsidizing or encouraging regenerative agriculture. My first question is, what the hell does that mean? My second question is, does this just mean we're going to put a couple $2 billion in McDonald's pockets or Coca-Cola's pockets to, grow their sugar cane in a regenerative way? I don't know. So, but I mean, I'm discouraged because it sounds like, lipstick on a pig. Yeah. But I'm encouraged because we're having that conversation.
Exactly.
But Shawn, to address your question, yes, I'm a firm believer that our governmental policy agriculturally has played a significant role in the degrading of our soils, the degrading of the nutrient density of our foods. To take it sort of tangential to food, but crop agriculture, I think it's the most laughable thing on the planet. We burn more carbon in the form of fuel and everything else growing corn to stick in gasoline in the form of ethanol than we save in carbon from just running pure gasoline. And the irony is, if you want to talk about how screwed up the incentives are, if I go to my gas station right here, we have 2 or 3 gas stations in town where you can buy pure gasoline or ethanol, 10% ethanol gasoline. The 10% ethanol gasoline at the pump costs less than the pure gasoline. So in what world does that even make it's kind of like a Twinkie costs less than an apple.
Right.
But all you got to do to get an apple is go up to the tree and pick it. But we've got to build a factory, and we got to grow all these inputs and blah, blah. Now, now the Twinkie can sit in a bag in your garage for 20 years and not spoil, but
and nothing will eat it.
And that's right.
That's the other thing. Nothing will eat it.
Besides humans.
No.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you a funny. So I'm at my office. I have a day job working the insurance industry, and I walked down the steps of my office. This is 6 or 8 weeks ago. We'd had a festival here in town, and the Sundae cone things, the ice cream cones that you can get. They got a cone, and then it's a pre-packaged thing. You can buy them at the store. You tear the top off. Yeah, a cone. Someone, I guess it had melted. Some kid had dropped the top of their cone, so the chocolate and nuts and a bunch of the ice cream had fallen on our pavement out here and was just melted. And I walked by that for 3 weeks. It sat on the ground. Not an ant, not a fly, not anything touched it for 3 weeks. And finally it rained and washed it away. But I walked by that every day, and I would laugh every time. It's like, not even the ants will eat this garbage.
But we do.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah. And back on your ethanol subsidies, and we'll wrap this podcast up. Ethanol subsidies, they've got to stop. Why do you think, people in the Midwest are growing so much corn? It's because of the ethanol subsidies. And, ethanol, you can't even move in a pipeline because it's too volatile. It'll evaporate. So you got to move it with a truck. You've got to grow the corn. You got to use a plow with a tractor. You got to use a combine. You got to use a truck to haul it, all of which use diesel. And we're going to haul the ethanol with all this stuff that uses diesel and call it good for the environment. And I'm not saying diesel's bad for the environment. I'm just saying it makes no sense whatsoever.
And all of that to supposedly, and by the way, it makes your car less efficient and makes your car break down. I mean, if I were going to create a system that made a bunch of people really, really wealthy selling us garbage, I don't think you could, Shawn, if we sat down and spent a week figuring out a way to make people unhealthy, to make the soil unhealthy, and to make some people very, very rich doing so, I don't think we could concoct a better strategy.
No. And ethanol too. I don't know. I don't remember the numbers, but I think it's like you have to burn 4 times as much ethanol, like 4 gallons of ethanol every 1 gallon of gas or diesel, because it's not as concentrated in hydrocarbons or energy.
Correct.
And it might even be 8-to-1. I don't remember, but you got to burn a lot more ethanol. So it's just silly. All government subsidies are silly. We need to, get rid of those, let the free markets work, let farmers, take care of their land like they did 200 years ago, and we'd be much better off.
I like to, Joel I've got to know, I have to always brag on him. The Salatin family really got me into farming. Joel has been unbelievably gracious and generous with his time with me over the years. And I find myself saying a lot of Salatinisms, but, if you go it's the holidays and somebody's, we're going to have a party tonight or tomorrow night. And I'd like to live in a world. So, okay, you go to your party and your banker drives up in a Mercedes and your stockbroker drives up in a Range Rover, and and no one says a word, your CPA drives up in a BMW. But the minute your farmer pulls up in a nice car, first thought, everybody's like, well, they're charging too much for food. And I would love to live in a world where the farmer gets the respect they deserve for the unbelievable work that they're doing. Now, I'd like to see more farmers farming in a regenerative fashion. Again, I'd like to see our federal government encourage such things. I mean, to be honest, I'd love to see the government just completely out of farming.
Get out of it. Right.
I mean, just leave it alone.
Yep.
I think if you want something to get more expensive and less efficient, let the government get involved. But
right.
But we do have impact as consumers. We have impact to buy local from our local people. I mean, that's something Shawn and I have done for years. We buy our beef from a local rancher. We know them. We can go to the farm. We can see where that animal's roaming, not standing. So we have options, and maybe it's harder in some places, but we can, as consumers, look for those sources. And I feel like, when we went to Healing Humanity, we're hearing, folks like yourselves and other people being able to get into that side of our economic part of buying food. And I think that is important, because the more people know they have choices and what those choices would mean to them, like, hey, I don't have to invest this in these supplements if I can get my nutrients from what you grew in your crop, or the pigs that, they got, you know where I'm going with this. We can, as consumers, demand more of our industry.
Janet, it is the most powerful point. It's how I closed my TED Talk. I think I mentioned something on our regenerative ag panel, but for your listeners, first of all, everyone can take a step. Mm-hmm. Okay, everyone's step's going to be different. If you live in a rural area and can't get you could start a little garden. You could. I mean, everyone can take a step, but I have to tell you, the consumer is more powerful today than they've ever before in history. I like to point to the Primal Kitchen as a good example. This is Mark Sisson's company. He sold it, I think, to General Mills, or one of the big. And everyone always gets their, forgive the term, panties in a wad when Siete chips or one of these up and coming sort of I think health centered companies. Epic Brands is another one, when they get bought. But I think that's a natural course. But Primal Kitchen, Mark built that company and sold it. And, I buy his stuff every week. I can get Primal Kitchen dressings at Walmart here in town. But I can tell you this, every probably third or fourth trip, they're stocking stuffers for, this is our holiday episode. I have dressings, his Chipotle dressings and I took a picture of the label and I went through it and everything looks the same. There's no nefarious stuff in there. The very minute that big company changes the ingredients in that label, consumers can in a second tell the world. And so, Janet, it's the most critical point, because it's the only way we get out of this is consumers making a step. In the pharmaceutical world, maybe the goal is to get off this one drug, and feed myself or go for walks or get morning sun, just whatever it takes to take that one next step. Buy local if you can, buy real food,
Right.
for those. It's so funny. I make fun of the vegans a lot, but a lot of people that go on the vegan diet think it's very healthy because they abandon what the diet that they left was just awful. The standard American diet is awful. And so, but here's the cool thing. Okay, we know that leaving that and taking a step towards eating real foods, where the ingredients of the food you're eating are the food that you're eating, is a tremendous step forward. And so I'm glad you brought that up. For all the listeners out there, you have more power than ever before in history, and you have the control. You can make a little step.
That's right. Free markets work every time. Vote with your pocketbook. I mean, it works.
Exactly right.
So tell us about, you have some animal-based skincare products, right?
We do. Yeah. We're the first lard game in town. Tallow's very hot. I love tallow. Tallow comes from beef. Well, it comes from ruminant animals, but lard is pig specific. And so we have a lard-based skincare brand. We use tallow as well. And this is our fourth year. Shawn, I'm still making this stuff out of my kitchen. Love it. We handcraft, but just a handful of products. I had a really bad sunburn. This is back in 2019. And in a sheer act of desperation and curiosity, I was raising pasture raised pigs. And instead of CeraVe or aloe vera or one of these other, commercially available options, I had a jar of lard I was cooking with in my fridge, and I decided to cover up with this stuff. I mean, my skin was as red as your jacket today. I mean, I was cooked. And it really did the trick. My sunburn was gone in a matter of days. I put it on a couple times. My sunburn was gone a couple days, but the light bulb moment was I never peeled. And everybody on the call here is fair skinned enough. If you get burned, you're gonna peel. And when that didn't happen, man, it just sort of light bulb went off, and I started doing some research, and so yes, we've got a handful of products. They're highly effective. If I can dispel a couple of skincare myths and rumors out there, they want to tell us we need 17 different products and an AM routine and a PM routine, and something for your face is somehow different than your body. Healthy skin is healthy skin, and regrettably, again, y'all are familiar with this. The food industry and the skincare industry look a lot alike. Mm-hmm. Lots of preservatives, lots of biologically misaligned ingredients with humans. And so we took all of that garbage out, all the chemicals, all the emulsifiers and binders and preservatives, and we have a handful of products that work unbelievably well at name your skin problem. And so, that's us.
I love it. I love it. So as we wrap this podcast up, Charles, tell us what you have a passion for.
Oh, gosh. Well, I would say that my passions in recent years have been pointed toward the pig. The pig was an absolute staple in our diet, in our textile industry, in a number of things that make the human existence unbelievable. And they've got a lot of flack in the last probably 100 years. And so I'm passionate about I call them a modern day superhero. They need a lot of help. According to the Sentience Institute, I think 98.6% of the pork raised in this country has grown up in a factory farming model. We need to reverse that. And so I'm trying to highlight the benefits of the pig through the lens of skincare. I always like to talk about pasture-raised pork as a food source. It is a superfood, and frankly, people need to demand eating pastured pork in order for me to have the ingredients to make my products. And so I'm super passionate about the pig. I say the swine is divine, but the lard is hard. And so I don't expect us to start making all the things we used to make out of the pig from a textile industry perspective. But I do believe that pasture raised, we call it smart lard. I believe that smart lard is the absolute key to optimal skin health from a product standpoint. I'm Shawn, I'm the first to say, if it comes to healthy skin, like, get out of the way, like, get your sleep, eat good food, exercise, sweat, get plenty of good sunshine, all the lifestyle things that give our skin permission to glow. But when it comes to putting something on, our products are remarkable at doing that.
I love it. Well, Charles, thank you for being on our show today. You've helped us realize our goal, which is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. So I really appreciate it, Charles. Thank you.
Thank you both. This has been a real pleasure of mine.
And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Monday to a regularly scheduled podcast, 12:30 to 1:30 Pacific Standard Time. Thank you.